and welcome back to the Always Better Than Yesterday interview sessions with me, Ryan Hartley. And today I'm joined by Natalie Allport. Welcome, Natalie. How are you?
Hey, I am great. Hope you're doing well as well, and thank you so much for having me.
Amazing. It's really good to have you. And I would just love it if you could just give us a short introduction to who you are and a little bit about your story.
Yeah, so like you said, I'm Natalie Allport. I live up here in Canada, and where it's nice and cold, and people have all these crazy things that they think we do here. But you know what? Actually, today it's pretty warm. I was a former national team snowboarder. I spent 4 years on the Canadian national team. I grew up kind of playing every sport, very much so into hockey, another very Canadian sport, and then switching over to snowboarding because I had a passion for skateboarding, and that kind of led me into the action sports world. And from there, I kind of just kept going with snowboarding. I grew up where there was no resorts, so I kind of had to, make do with the little jumps and the little rails that were around my house, and setting things up in my backyard, going down the patio steps and practicing. And eventually slopestyle snowboarding got into the Olympics, and I got onto the junior national team. So like I said, I spent 4 years there traveling, competing. Unfortunately, I fell short of the 2014 Olympics, and I retired. I like to call it retired. Much better than quitting or moving on to something else. In 2015, had a lot of injuries that unfortunately were kind of unpreventable. It's just kind of the way snowboarding is. It's not a matter of if, it's just when and how often. And then from there, I started a digital marketing agency, and I actually had kind of started that a little bit while I was during my snowboard career, as I was studying my business degree at the same time. And I learned how to market myself through social media while I was competing, and some sponsors took notice and asked if I could do the same for their business. Now I compete in CrossFit, and I manage my business, and kind of merge my passions of fitness, business, sport, and that's kind of where I'm heading with my trajectory.
I love that. Thank you for that introduction. And I think on this podcast, I love to share the hearts and minds of my guests with the audience. And I think I don't really want to brush over this sentence that you just said around falling short of the Olympics, because I've listened to your podcast and you said at the age of 3 that you were going to be in the Olympics. And I'd just love to know the kind of heart and mind behind that sentence and how that kind of manifested throughout your growing up.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it was the Atlanta Olympics or something, and my parents had it on. My dad is Canadian, my mom is from Venezuela. She moved here knowing no English for university, and my dad and her went to the same college, and then they actually ended up going to the same university afterwards, and becoming friends, and then starting a relationship. And they got us into sports. She's like the least competitive person ever, and my dad is very competitive and always pushing me. And I think that I've kind of follow like I got a lot of his personality traits in that
Mm.
sense. He's the entrepreneur of the family. He's the competitive one. And so yeah, from day one, he put us into every sport that we could do. And yeah, I remember watching the Olympics. I had this trike, and I was going around the living room and the kitchen in circles, and I was cutting corners. There's a mark on the couch still to this day, of like the where my trike would cut the corner to get that turn. And yeah, I said I was going to the Olympics. I'm going to the Olympics. And so yeah, they just kind of let me, they sacrificed a lot for me to go into any sport that I wanted to, and try to pursue it at the level that I could. We weren't super wealthy, so summer camps for hockey were like, we have this old log cabin that's a family cottage, and my dad would do dry land training with me. We'd have running circuit and push-ups and all these things, because he's like, if you want new hockey skates, you have to work for them. You have to do this. And so, all these things kind of pushed me. Sports were kind of natural to me, I think, because my dad pushed me so much. But part of it, might be genetics or whatever it is. But that was kind of what I felt I was, born to do. And so, yeah, some sports they picked up easily, but when I started snowboarding, I was terrible. I was
Mm.
actually like, it was the one sport that I was not good. And so I think that kind of just bugged me, because whenever I was trying to learn something, my dad would say, "You can't do it. If you don't get it the next try, we're going home." And so I'd always get it. So I think for me, my whole family's skiing. They would ditch me and say like, "See you at the end of the day," because I'm trying to snowboard. And so I was like, you know what? No, I really want to learn this. I want to be good at this. All the boys in my class were snowboarding, and so I was like, no, 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 I need to do this too.
Mm.
And I really wanted to keep up with them, because I actually played boys baseball, and was trying to always keep up with everyone in my class. And yeah, eventually that just kind of snowballed into me somehow, traveling a little bit further for competition and doing these things. And at first, my parents didn't understand because I gave up hockey. But yeah, then I was out west. I graduated high school a semester early so that I could work and pay for snowboarding and go to some competitions. And I went out that summer to a summer camp out west, and they announced that snowboarding would be in the Olympics. And so the whole vibe was amazing. We actually had no qualification process until that summer. Someone emailed me or yeah, sent me a message that they're like, "Hey, did you see on Canada Snowboard website you're on the junior national team?" I was like, "What?" I had no idea. Like, this is the first time hearing. I didn't know there was a qualification process. Obviously now it's much more structured. And yeah, so that kind of led to, oh my gosh, I need to get a coach. I need to, move somewhere where there's actually resorts to train. I need to start, working on my strength and conditioning. I need to do all these things and dive right into it. And yeah, so dive right into it. I did. I had a lot of, big goals. I wanted to be the best. I had, the current best on my wall. I actually, like, I competed against her many times. I got to the level where I was competing against all the people like I would see in my magazines growing up,
Mm,
and yeah, all these things. But unfortunately, yeah, like, one of the things with snowboarding is injuries are just prevalent. And so as much as I think that I was one of the strongest and most well-conditioned athletes in snowboarding because I was so committed to my off
mm,
snow training, um, you just, when you're falling 100 feet to some on a bone or something, like, you can't prevent those things. I could prevent, like, I never tore my ACL, and there's a few different things, muscular things, but I've broken my ribs, I've broken my tailbone. I had a foot injury that I was off for 6 months. I was
mm,
actually at Junior Worlds in Turkey, and I had to sit on the sidelines the whole time.
mm,
There's a lot of things, and I usually was pretty good at bouncing back from them, but something kind of switched before my 2015 season. And when I was doing all these things that I dreamt of doing as a kid, and it just didn't feel right. And I felt almost um, guilty for feeling that way. Like, I was kind of feeling anxious and almost depressed, and like, I want to be
mm,
home. But I was like, everyone at home is messaging me like how lucky I am to be living this life. So that's really difficult. And I think that almost brings up the conversation of, like, mental health and athletes, because
mm,
you have these thoughts and you feel so guilty for it because everyone thinks you're living this amazing life that you're so grateful for. And it's not that you're not
mm,
grateful, but there's something else going on. And so, yeah, I went through that season feeling off. And unfortunately, one of the turning points for me was, I was like, no, I'm going to ignore these feelings and spend the
mm,
whole year going all in, because I want to know if I quit, like, did I really, really want to quit, or did I just, like, yeah, I feel like quitting and just leave. And so one of my friends, I had drove down to Philadelphia, and my friends had all flew in, my coach, everything, but I took my car. It was like a 12-hour drive or something like that. And so I was like the driver and the coordinator, and everyone at that competition got injured from my team except for me. And so this competition had over 50% dropout rate, actually, and which is like crazy. Like, in all sports, do you see 50% of people getting injured and
mm,
dropping out of the competition before it starts?
mm,
Probably not. And so it just showed, like, there's so many politics that go on. And for me, I like to see, like, if I work really hard, it puts me on a straight trajectory to, like, being the best. And in snowboarding, there's all these side politics. There's, they're running a competition because it needs to be on TV that's in bad weather. There's all these things, and it started, like, really getting to me. And then so my friend, she fell right on the front. She broke her ribs and got internal bleeding, had to be really, like, almost airlifted. And so, sitting beside her, her mom had to drive, I think for her it was 8 hours down, and seeing her getting, like, the blood pumped out and everything.
mm.
And her mom just was saying, like, I think we need to talk to her about, stopping this. And it just, like, I spent the whole 12 hours drive home in silence crying, I think, because I was just thinking, like, how could I, like, do that to my family? And growing up, I was like, if
Mm,
I die snowboarding, I die snowboarding. I love doing this. But eventually I realized, I liked business. I liked entrepreneurship. I liked all these other things that I was doing. And yeah, if I lost my life doing this, or something really bad happened, I was injured for life, it would kind of sacrifice all these other goals I had. And so I really took a deep look, and that kind of led to, at the end of that season, calling it quits.
Wow, what journey! And there's so much I want to ask you, and I'm really curious because in that world of mental health, and there's so much comparison on social media around. I think sometimes the images of social media, they reveal to us sometimes who we're not. And I'm really curious to know how you had a picture of the best on your wall and actually used that in a positive way. How did you do that?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's hard. Like, I think or like I said, and like you just mentioned, people think the best. So they see me out there and they're all messaging me, like my friends from my gym or whatever. They're like, "Oh, I'm so jealous. I come back and I come to the gym and they're all talking about like how amazing, how amazing." And there's
Hmm.
only one or two people who actually knew what was going on. My really close friends that I was texting throughout and saying like how distraught I was feeling. And then I felt guilty because I didn't want to say like people have worse problems than me, traveling the world snowboarding and not enjoying it. So yeah, but I try to, everything I do, I try to visualize, and whether it's putting pictures or just repeating things or reading things over from my past, whatever it is, to like, motivate myself in the moment. So throughout that snowboard career, or that year, I needed a lot of motivation.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, looking at images, reading old messages from family and friends that were like, "Hey, this is what you want to do," reminding myself like what I wanted to do as a kid, just to push through. But I realized, you know, if you had to spend a whole year doing that, probably it's not what you want to do anymore. And I started looking
Mm.
back, and actually, I used to keep a journal while I was traveling snowboarding. And I looked back like from even 4 years prior to that, and I saw that I had already had some mention where there was days where I thought, is this really what I want to do? And then it's like the next day I cross it out and I'm like, what a stupid thing to say. And
Mm-hmm.
so, there was kind of hints of it, I think. I think I realized that, as much as I love the sport, perhaps it doesn't, I mean, it really did align with my personality, but in the same sense, like that snowboard is a little bit different because it's kind of an anti-culture sport. And for me, I came from a very sport background, and I loved training and I loved all those things. And so I was very different. I was always training by myself because no one would train during the season. And the
Mm.
strength and conditioning coach said, "Yeah, it's fine. You can do what you want," because, I was already doing more than usual. And so, yeah, it was definitely really tough to get through that year for sure.
Mm. You talked about the final year being an all in mentality, and obviously that is the name of your podcast, the All In podcast. What does it mean to be all in?
Yeah, I think that it just means like you're betting everything on yourself. Like you're fully into what you're doing. And I think that comes from like a lot of the things that I share on social media now comes from like thinking like effort is cool, and there shouldn't be a shame in looking like a try hard per se, because growing up, I think especially in your teenage years, you get judged for looking like you're trying really hard at something or really want to do
Hmm.
something. And I think
Hmm.
that's why so many, say women in sport quit, or guys who are really interested in something that goes against the herd, they quit what they're doing because everyone judges them for trying so hard. And I think the statement of no one who's doing more than you
Yeah.
will judge you or comment negatively or whatever it is, it really applies in this context because it's true. But it takes a lot of maturing to get to the point where you start trying to ignore those comments. And as a kid, it's really impactful. And so that's what I've been trying to kind of make my mission is, it's cool to be a tryhard and to go all in on things and put yourself out there, because when you go all in, it leaves yourself vulnerable to failure. Like I was all in on, going to the Olympics and being a
Mm.
professional snowboarder, and I fell short of my Olympic goal. And that means I had to, that made it actually really hard when I quit, because it was like, how do I tell the people who've been supporting me, or this has been my goal, my sponsors, my friends from high school who I was trying to prove wrong, or whatever it was, that I didn't make the Olympics. But then now I realize, I spent 4 years with global sponsors and on the national team at the highest level, so I can't really complain too much. I competed against everyone who was at the Olympics, and it just, you have to do things that make you happy. And I think that means going all in on your passions and not pushing them down and just going half-ass so that you can, please someone else or not look like a failure if you fall short.
Yeah. I think, and this relates to being always better than yesterday as well, is that mindset of being committed to your own growth sometimes requires us to make sacrifices. Is that something that you have felt along the way?
Yeah, most definitely. There's always somewhere you have to sacrifice. And I like the thing, like when people say that balance looks different for everyone. And I think that's very true because I'm someone who, even on my podcast, I try to share a little bit about balance because I know rest and recovery are so important for training and entrepreneurship or whatever you're
Mm-hmm.
doing. You need to take that step back to make 2 steps forward. However, some people think, oh, well, it means like you need to have this perfect life balance where, okay, you want to be the best parent, you want to be the best athlete, this. It's like, no, those things are not really doable at the same time. You actually have to be very realistic in your expectations of, if you want to be the next Tiger Woods or whatever it is, there's going to be sacrifices you're going to have to make in your life. But for you, that might be balanced because this goal has way more priority than this one. So, you're giving a little bit of time here because you also have that importance. But I think it's important to, just recognize that balance is totally different for everyone. If you want to work 15 hours a day and you can truly recover and get back to that grind, then go for it. If for you, 8 hours and taking that rest and spending that time with your family is the most important, 100% do it.
Yeah, I think I heard you say that that once you know you're going to sacrifice, you've got to be really clear on for what reason are you sacrificing. And I guess, is that something you had in the front and center of your mind as you were growing and heading towards the Olympics and the competitions? Were you clear on what you were willing to sacrifice for?
Yeah, and that was something I actually would journal a lot about and like try to, kind of make sense of it all, especially when I was feeling like maybe should I quit or what am I
Mm,
doing? It was like what drives me and what motivates me. And, a lot of what motivated me actually was just being always better than yesterday. Like,
mm,
just improving and seeing how far I could come. And for me, I grew up where there's no ski resorts. Everyone in my school said, no, you're not gonna be a pro snowboarder. All the guys were like, you suck at snowboarding right now. What are you telling us? Um, I was the girl at school who everyone thought, like, they write in the yearbook, like, great athlete, great athlete. Like, I was, who they thought would be an athlete as much as, maybe I was teased about it or for the different goals that I had within it. And so, I was just always remembering, like, I want to prove not even just to other people, but to myself that I
mm,
can come from here and like make it to the top. And it can prove to other people that if you believe in yourself and you have these goals, you can do it. You don't have to settle into whatever, everyone else is saying you can do, but that you can actually achieve that. And so, I'd put like pictures of the best athletes on my wall. I had Muhammad Ali up and, all these different
hmm
things, quotes and whatever it is. And it would always just remind me like these people have the same story that I'm trying to build. Like they came from having this dream and starting with nothing or starting small. Like, everyone starts at that beginner stage when they learn a sport and they got to the best and it's like, why not me? I feel like I want to do that too. And so in everything I do, and even still now, like I always am driven by that. And I think that's a cool thing about sports is once you get to those high levels, whether you're, especially when you're on a team athlete, but even individually, you're surrounded by all those people who have that same mentality and goal. And
mm,
that's really cool because, especially in snowboarding, everyone's kind of friends. Like it's not like a lot of tension between people at the top. Like you're competing, but you're hanging out afterwards. And I think it's because everyone has that mutual respect that, we all have this big goal. We've all made our sacrifices to get here. And yeah, and then for me, like I had an uncle and who is he coached, I think he worked with the military with some strength and conditioning, and then he coached volleyball and different things. And he told me, he sat me down once and he said, to get to the level you want to you want to be at, you have to be selfish. He says after you're snowboarding and you need to recover, and to recover well, you feel like you need to get out of those cold clothes and into like the warm socks and the sweatpants, you lay them out and you like make sure you get into them. You don't let people distract you and do this. He's like, really, to be the best, you do have to be selfish in a way. And that kind of changed my mindset a little bit because I felt like sometimes, I'm like, well, I don't want to make anyone upset. I'll follow people here, do whatever they want. And so you have to find a mix of them both and
mm,
maybe care a little bit less about what people think.
mm. You said nothing was given that wasn't deserved. What does that mean?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, growing up, my parents really ingrained that into me. I got like 25 cents a month as allowance. Really, like it took me a year to buy like a $16 X Games skateboard when I was a kid. I think every year we got like 25 more cents or something. It was, yeah, we didn't get much when it came to those things because that's something that they really try to ingrain in us was, if you want something, you have to work for it. And I think
Mm,
especially they had to really drive that into me because school and sports came easily for me. They actually, there was an opportunity for me to skip a grade when I was younger, but luckily they didn't because I was actually born late in my year and I
Hmm.
was small when I was a kid. So I would have been like small and super young, like almost 2 years younger than the people a year ahead. So, um, but my teacher told them that like I learned things very quickly. And so then I would get bored and distracted and just, tune out, which is pretty much what happened with school. Not that I was a bad student, I did get my business degree in university, but because I was interested in business. If it came to
Hmm.
like science class in high school, I was like, no. Um, and so yeah, so those things, kind of were always ingrained in me. And it was the same thing with like all these girls were going to hockey camp growing up, and their parents would throw them into everything just because they thought it was what everyone else was doing, whether
Hmm.
they were super into it or not. And so I was very into it, but my dad was like, well, hockey camp is super expensive, like how bad do you actually want to? um and so yeah, so he said, like, if you want new skates or you want this, like, you have to show me that you want it. Like, we had this hockey goalie in our basement, and the little we took like the boards of an arena that was tearing them down and replacing them. And so I had like a place to stick handle and to practice shooting in my basement. And so if he sees me working really hard at those things, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, you are working hard enough that maybe you can get that new piece of equipment or whatever it is. Because yeah, a lot of kids are just, here's a brand new pair of skates, here's the brand new this, but like, what's the point? It's not going to make you
Hmm.
better if you're not actually working for it. And so I think I definitely needed a lot of pushing in that sense, and snowboarding helped because it was a challenge and something I had to overcome. Because yeah, like a lot of things did come easily, and so my parents made sure to push me out of my comfort zone to things that didn't come easily. And
Yeah.
I'm really grateful for that, because I think, without learning that lesson, life could take a different path when you just pursue anything that comes easily.
Yeah, I love that. You talked about mindset, mental health, particularly being an athlete, but also as an entrepreneur as well. I know that your podcast is very much geared to be practical, lots of tips and techniques that maybe your listeners can take away to help them in their own journey. It's very much aligned to what I like to help our listeners connect with. And are there some tips, strategies, techniques, mindset wise that have been quite consistent through all those people that you've spent time with?
Yeah, so my snowboarding coaches growing up, they were really into like visualization, and so
Mm.
now I wouldn't. I guess I visualize a little bit, but I've transferred that into meditation and those kind of things. And so that's kind of what they were trying to ingrain in us, is to get used to how you can find that flow state, especially that's important in snowboarding.
Mm.
Um, and how you can calm down and train your mind. And so yeah, meditation has been huge for me. Something I try to do. I've been playing around with breath work and different things as well, and seeing which fits best for me, or doing both actually if I can. But yeah, meditation is huge. Taking that time, especially in the morning, I find for me to center yourself and have that time for yourself before you get caught up in
Mm.
social media and whatever else is going on. Journaling is also something big for me. I haven't been keeping, like when I was a kid and snowboarding, I would keep like these long journals of my daily pursuits. Now I just have a gratitude journal, and I try to write out like in the morning things I'm grateful for, and then at the end like things that went well. And I do find that that's helpful because it makes you look for the good in every day, and it sets you up in the morning, and then reminds you at night for the same things.
Mm.
um Other things is allowing yourself to sit with emotions, because I used to like have all these mood swings when I was growing up. And it's like almost every time you have a mood swing, you're like forcing yourself to go into the other mood, and you're like, I shouldn't be feeling this. And so sometimes now I'm like, you know what, I have a day where I'm just feeling a little bit bummed out, a little bit anxious, and I start thinking, people around you start asking, why are you anxious? Like, but what is it? Is it this? And I'm like, no, it's nothing in particular. It's just these feelings that I'm having. And you know what? I think I just have to, like, tomorrow will be better. And it's, as much as I try to snap out of it now, perhaps I can't, but I'm just going to sit with this and know that, it's not going to last forever. Because I think when you start thinking it will, and you're like, oh my gosh, I feel like this, what's wrong? You almost it starts lasting longer. Like, it's like it goes on for multiple days and then you start focusing on it. So I think just, being able to create that space and be like, okay, and like kind of disassociate from that feeling, and then hopefully you bounce back a little bit quicker.
Yeah. My background's in policing, and when officers retire after doing 30 years of service, they suffer an identity crisis. And I know that that is always something that athletes can be prone to at the end of their career. And as you say, you retired from one sport. How did you deal with that?
Yeah, that was really tough because my friends, my family, if I meet someone new, they're like, "This is my daughter. She's a national team snowboarder." I was like, and I was always like kind of shy. Like when I was a kid, I went to parents put me in drama camp one summer. It was really weird. I actually didn't go to many camps, but we lived in the States for 2 years, and so and they put me to this like week-long drama camp, and they my dad brought flowers, and I was so ashamed to get them, and I like cried and ran away. And so, yeah, so I just yeah, I didn't really like that feeling, and so it was kind of the same thing when they would introduce me to their friends and family as this thing, but it really just became ingrained in my identity, like, that was who I was,
Mm,
and especially, like, I'd reach out to sponsors, different people, and that's how I had to sell myself. So I'm this is what I do, and so I started becoming attached to, like, me being the athlete, me being the results, this and this,
yeah.
and so, yeah, it was really difficult because I don't think you can really prepare for that. You can in a way for sure,
Mm,
and to help yourself prepare, but it's almost like when you go through it, you'll understand the feeling. And so once I stopped, yeah, it like sent me into a really rough time. I went to therapy for that whole summer afterwards, and that was very helpful. My therapist was like he used to play competitive soccer. I don't know if he was professional or just competitive, but it was good to have someone who understood. Um, and yeah, just like dealing with those things is very difficult, but it's almost like it forced me to mature a lot in a short period of time because I was living in this one world and all of a sudden I'm back to to the normal world in a sense, and now I have to figure out how I fit in there, and you have to figure it out pretty quickly because otherwise your feelings linger for a very
mm,
long time. And yeah, it's taken me a long time to figure it out. I think I'm always going to be figuring it out and trying to see what I'm doing, but I think the most important thing is just recognizing you're human who is just trying to always be learning and growing. And for me, I'm like, you know what? Throughout that whole process, I was learning and growing. And then, because I retired doesn't mean those were the good old days and now my life is totally different. I'm building off that. Like, I'm better today
mm,
than I was back then as a person because of those experiences. And so that's part of my identity. For a while it was difficult. I actually one thing that I had to do was write a letter to snowboarding, was
mhm,
something that because I had a lot of resentment almost to
mhm,
it because I was like, this sport made me, I could have been maybe better at a different one, or this sport is so dangerous. And I had all these feelings. I was like, wait, that's not how I feel about this. This sport gave me so much. And
yeah.
so, having to deal with that is, but I think it's important to reflect and take those growth opportunities and not just like put it in a box and forget and move on to something else.
So how have you taken all of your experiences, the highs, the lows, and use that to serve through your business venture?
Yeah, so I think like athletes make incredible entrepreneurs because they have a lot of those skill sets of like hard work, of dedication, of being patient also in the
Mhm,
process because athletes work for decades at what their craft
mhm,
for it to pan out to maybe an Olympics or this big event or to finally go pro. And in business, a lot of people want something to work tomorrow. And yeah, I think that's a cool thing about sports is like you dedicate so much time for like a small window of opportunity. And so having that same patience while still persisting day in and day out in business is, I think, a very valuable tool to have. Not that I'm a super patient person in any means, but I do think having that mindset where it's like, you know what, I'm going to focus on the little things I need to do right every single day, and I know a year from now that's going to really add up and be beneficial instead of always worrying about, okay, what about in a year from now? Where will I be? Where will I be? That
mm,
doesn't really help you take those actions every single day. So that's definitely a big one. I think also just using that to, kind of pitch my story and my business also because that's the cool thing about athletes is not only do you have those traits, but because you are an athlete, you shouldn't just say like, forget that you were an athlete and
mhm,
pitch yourself as I'm just this business person. Like, tell your whole story and share your story because people will see, oh wow, they overcame this and this and this, and they see that and they can relate it into business and into having those traits and into like an immediate credibility or trust. So I
mm,
think those kind of things panned out. And then for me more specifically, like the whole marketing and social media side of things really helped with my business because that's what I do and what I do for my clients. And so understanding all those kind of things are important.
yeah, I love that. Who should connect with 93 Agency? How do they go and find out what you're up to, and how do they find out more information?
Yeah, so you can go to 93agency.com for more information. We are really focusing on Facebook ads has been our main focus, but we also do a
Mhm.
lot of strategy for the organic social media side of things, and that's how we really started 6 years ago. Was a lot of the organic social media management and those kind of things. And so yeah, so people can go there. We have free strategy calls if people want to book something and we can chat and see if it's a good fit to work together. Yeah, we're really not salesy, so just chatting, helping people, and seeing which direction they go. And if it's a fit, if it's a fit, and if not, then we'll lead you in the right direction and give you some tips to go to that right direction.
I love that. We've talked a number of times around this sense of being better than yesterday, but what does the phrase always better than yesterday mean to you?
Yeah, I think it means constantly improving. And for me, I almost cringe or like shed a tear when someone says that, they peaked in high school or they
Hmm.
peaked in university or they peaked when they used to play the sport or, this was the good old days. Like, yeah, I remember those times fondly and I miss them, but I don't think that's when I peaked. I don't want to ever peak until like my deathbed. Like I want my life to be a constant improvement on everything I've learned. I don't want it to be like, wow, I peaked here and now I'm like settling into something else. Like I don't want to ever settle.
I love that. How can people consume more of your content, the podcast, your socials? Where can they find you?
Yeah, just yeah, at Natalie Allport on Instagram is probably the best place to find me. And in my bio, you'll find my links to my business page, my podcast, all those good stuff. So usually that's kind of the hub for everything.
Amazing. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to come and spend it with our community. And I would just love you to leave us with a final thought from your good self.
Oof, final thought. Don't be afraid to be a tryhard, put an effort into something and go all in and don't be afraid to, tell other people that this is what you're doing. Don't be shy because I think, your passion will inspire someone else to go all in on their passion and we need a lot more of that in the world.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.